Hello friends, how you doing? I'm making a quick video for you to show you some of the best workflow makers that I've discovered in my work in the studio. So let's dive right in and let me show you the first, which I think is a must-have, and also it's pretty affordable. So I think it's a really nice tip, and it's this little guy here called the Shuttle Pro V2. There you go. It's also what I used for the beginning image of this video. So what this little guy does, and let me bring you up down here a little bit with me. What this guy does is it allows me to be working on my music with both hands. As you see, you have a whole bunch of buttons up here that you can map to key commands per app. I only have it mapped to Ableton. I've learned that actually the correct way to say it in English is Ableton, not Ableton. I've been pronouncing it the way I've been hearing it in Germany, but I looked at some YouTube videos from Ableton and that's how they said it. So thank you to the people that pointed that out to me. A little bit embarrassing, but I learned it in the end. Alright, so back to the matters at hand. The Shuttle Pro here, as you see, it has all kinds of different functions that you could program, but actually what I use it almost the most on is a very simple function. Namely, I have the wheel at the top. How can I show this all together? Yes, I have the wheel at the top here basically set up so that I can zoom in and out. So this what is it, jog wheel? So I can zoom in to any clip in my Ableton, which is so nice if you don't have to keep going up to the top menu here to be able to zoom in. So I have that. Then I have this side command here. You can't really see it very well on the camera, but there is another button right here. And if I select a clip and I click that twice, look what happens. You see, it zooms it to full width and then it zooms it to full height, which is also such a nice key command to have. And if I click back on the left side, it goes back to the way it normally is. I have stop and start sort of in this middle button right here. I have a whole bunch of other commands. Let me open it for you so you can actually see it programmed to this. I wonder if I can export this file, because I would be happy to share it with you if you end up getting one of these things. It'll save you a bunch of time. So let me bring this up to the main screen so you can see it properly. So yeah, like what is this? Control T, so that's obviously add track, add MIDI track. What is this? Delete, nice function to have up there. Automation, show automation on off. God, I don't even know what W does. Let me have a look. Oh, that's full width. That is something also that is really nice to have. I don't use it that much from there. Space, which was, yeah, start, stop. H is full height, which if you have a whole bunch of tracks, it'll take things into full height. And what else do I have? Control L, which is to make a loop. So if you want to loop something, that's a really quick way to do it. So you just select a piece and then hit there, Control L. So you don't end up having to move your hands around the keyboard much anymore. Everything is kind of at your fingertips, which, yeah, it's such a great way to be able to work once you internalize it. So that was the first little workflow maker, and like I said, if I can export this file, I'm pretty sure I can. There are options, export settings. Okay, cool. So I'm going to be able to export this. So I'll export this. This is for PC. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same on a Mac, but if you're on a PC, you're going to be able to use this. And these shuttle things cost about 100 euros from what I remember. I may have gotten it used, but it was something along those lines. So there you go. Super useful, very simple somehow, amazing piece of gear that, yeah, feels really nice to work with. I don't think I've managed to map the jog shuffle to anything. I've tried a few times, but that didn't work out, but I was pretty happy already with the things that I had. The other thing that I have to show you, which is just, yeah, everyone that comes to my studio that's not used to it, which is pretty much everyone, hates it with a passion, is this weirdo mouse that I have. If you're not using a trackball, I can really recommend it as something worth trying out, because it is way easier on your arm on your wrist. Let me bring you down here a bit so you can see it a bit better. Then actually using a normal mouse. And what I've basically done with it is I have a few basic functions locked down to this trackball. Let me go to this way so you can see it exactly in action. Tweak this down a bit so you can see it a bit better. There we go. There it is. So what I have is a button here, and at the side here there's two further buttons. Now, besides the mouse, as you can see probably on my screen, a trackball being way more sensitive than most mice, unless you're using some gaming mouses, I can basically go from one end of the screen to the other end of the screen in 2 finger movements, even in 1 if I really flick it. It's way more exact than any mouse that I've used, and as you see, my arm is resting on the table the whole time. So it's just chilling out there, right? Which is really nice, rather than having to do this, which stresses your arm way more. So yeah, really recommend to get some kind of a trackball. There are some trackballs where you move it with your thumb. I found that very hard to control. This I control with 2 fingers, and I can be much more exact. These mice are in very high demand. They don't make them anymore since over 10 years. They go for about 60 to 100 euros. Very recommended. Works both on Mac and PC. Ideally, I think actually it works best on PC. I'm not sure, but there must be some similar kind of cool stuff for Mac also. It's actually a Microsoft mouse. It's called Intellimouse. Yeah, so let me show you some of the things I can do with it. I can select, for example, something here, erase it, and at the this position here, I have undo. How cool is that, right? It's a function that you need so many times. So anything that I do, you know, if I mess up my mix or whatever, I can undo it with just 1 finger click, which is so nice to have. This button here is a normal click. This button here is right click. And at the top right position, I have double click. Which yeah, I used to use more when I was using Cubase, but yeah, that basically creates a double click anywhere I am. So as you can see, it's creating little MIDI clips and stuff like that there. So another, you know, huge improvement for a more ergonomic workflow, combined with the shuttle. You can be editing the way that kind of, yeah, professional editing people do, which is using both hands at the same time, and not, even if you do know your keyboard shortcuts, there are some here still that I do need, which, as you see, someone really quickly picked up that I have you know, special Ableton stickers on here that taught me what the key commands are, but 90% of the stuff that I do is now mapped to my mouse and my Shuttle Pro V2. Yeah, then this guy here, this is kind of more classic sort of music production gear. It's the Allen and Heath Xone K2. And I picked this up from watching Sebastian Müllert work. I can't demo it for you right now, but I'll explain it to you in a bit more detail when I do a specific video about it. Basically, this thing has 3 layers, so you can control up to 12 MIDI faders with just one of these, or actually MIDI channels or parameters. So you have a huge amount right there already that you can control. And what I saw Sebastian do, which is so smart, and I'm still integrating this, is he has 1 layer for, I think it was VST. Let me tell you, yeah, how I've basically been using it. Is 1 layer is routed to VSTs, 1 layer is routed to MIDI channels going to external instruments, and 1 layer is routed to my incoming channels where I can either sample direct or resample. And I can either select the recording channel, the resampling channel. I can select a external synth A, B, C, D, which is like my matrix, my Prophet, my what is the other one that I have it connected to? I think it's a Moog Mini Tower and a Digitone. And then this other layer connects to VST, so I have like a Diva, I have a Rhodes, and 1 or 2 other things, but I have a basic palette of sounds that I can select just at the drop of a button, and I can mix them into the mix quite quickly with the faders. And also I've mapped a reverb send, a delay send, and like a low cut, high cut type filter to those buttons up top. And with that you can control the sound really quickly and get into a space where you can kind of be, yeah, just in record mode kind of all the time really quickly. So that's also a really, really nice tool. I'm sure I'll do a dedicated video to it to show it to you in a bit more detail. I think, you know, this one is pretty obvious to everyone, you know, the AKAI APC. It's made for Ableton. It does work Ableton. God, I'm going to take a while to get used to that. It does work with other things. I use, basically the thing that I love the most about it is having the Q level dedicated button so that I can pre-listen to samples or my metronome at a fitting volume. Of course I control my whole live set with it, but also I do have these 8 poties here, these rotary encoders that whatever plugin you click, they get mapped to, and that's just worth its weight in gold. So for me, this is one of the very, very best controllers. I use it a ton in the studio. It's great for workflow. The Push, I'm still getting to grips with it. It's kind of new in my studio. I've seen already some of the amazing things that it can do. And yeah, it's pretty well documented out there, but I haven't gone deep with it yet, so I can't really say anything about it. Besides that, I think the step sequencer on it is amazing, and being able to quickly select notes and put in a different velocity, etc. It's super, super cool. So I'm sure I'm going to be using that more, but the one that I actually use a ton is the Beatstep Pro. And I've done a video, I'll link it here, how I use that to make bass lines, etc. Really, really, really great little step sequencer that if it's clocked off of a good clock, like I use the Multiclock, which I guess we could consider a workflow maker because it just makes tight MIDI timing so easy. It's in the video that I've linked before. It's also in there. I describe how it works. So yeah, this guy I couldn't work without it. So as you can see, all the stuff that I use all the time is really indirect reach. I mean, I could work without it, but it's so much easier and much more fun to create bass lines and little leads and sounds with the Beatstep Pro. So very, very much recommend checking this guy out and having a look at the video that I've linked above. Anything else here? Okay, this is really boring, but it's such a great tool, Patchbays. If you have a bunch of outboard gear or a bunch of synths and drum machines that you want to route into your DAW or around each other, like you want to put stuff to maybe like an effect pedal. I have my little effect pedal section down here. I just have these two, Specular Tempus and the DBA Rooms. That's what I primarily use for reverbs and delays. And I can send any synth, any drum machine in my studio to these two effect machines. These are the colorful ones here, so I can keep them apart. This goes to the Specular and this goes to the DBA Room. So if I want to record something with some reverb or with some delay, I just patch it, boom, it goes there and I can record it. And the same with all my outboard gear. You know, it's all available right here. And I can patch it in and out really quick, which is just really a joy. So I would recommend to get the Samson Patchbays. They're called S-Patch. Apparently they're better than the Neutrik ones, which are quite common, but I mean, you know, this is probably nitpicking. Like the Neutrik ones are probably pretty good as well. But yeah, I've heard from people that, you know, sell studio gear and you know, build really professional studios for pro musicians and broadcast, that the Neutrik ones are not that great. Ideally, the very best that you can get is the ones that you solder all your cables to on the back with very small TT Bantam type plugs. But I wasn't going to be bothered to solder every single cable in my studio to the back of a patch bay. I'm not that crazy. I do solder from time to time. See my little soldering machine being there doing its thing, but I wasn't going to solder like whatever, how many plugins are on the back of this to a more high-end patch bay. And anyway, those soldering patch bays are super expensive. They're like 500-600 euros just for one rack, which does have more points on it. Yeah, so Patchbays, really, really interesting piece of gear that will actually help you create better sounds because you can just send stuff everywhere. A really good workflow maker. And yeah, I mean, step sequencers generally are a really cool thing to have. You know, it's a shame to admit, but the Octatrack, I primarily use it just as a very souped up arpeggiator for the performer. I'm sure if you're interested, I'd do a video on that at some point. And then I have this thing here, the Darktime from Doepfer, which is also again a step sequencer, and this only triggers this guy here, the Behringer 2600 or the Mini Tower, and it's just really nice to be able to have a really cool, fast, intuitive way to maybe even randomly trigger notes on these synths. And I just set it to one note often, and I can transpose the sequence by sending it a MIDI note from my keyboard, which is yeah, down here, my little MIDI keyboard, which is actually an analog, what's it called, analog keys from Elektron, which sounds incredible, but like the screen is a little bit too small for my eyes, and I'm just lazy, so I don't use it as much as I should. But really interesting machine. But at the moment it's actually denigrated to MIDI keyboard duties. Sorry about that, guys from Elektron. It's an amazing sounding synth, but yeah, the screen is so small on it. My eyes are not what they used to be. Okay, that's it for me on the Workflow Makers. I think it's it's something a little bit different, and maybe something interesting for you to have seen. That there are these tools out there that are not strictly speaking maybe all studio tools, but that can make a huge difference for your workflow in the studio and make you faster and more effective. So yeah, that was it for me. Have a great afternoon, and see you on the next video. Bye bye.
Worry, fear,